How is your mental health? Billie Eilish, Kevin Love of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Imagine Dragons, Lil Nas X, and so many more feel the same pressures we do. They're joining our host, Carson Daly, for I'm Listening, September 23rd, starting at 6 p.m. right here. Carson and a cast of mental health experts, athletes, musicians, other notables, and you will share stories, insights, and help us all remember that we are not alone. Please join us, because talking about our mental health has the power to save lives. For more, visit imlistening.org.
I'm Doc Rivers, and I'm proud to present a new podcast documentary series called It Was Said Sports, where I guide you through 6 of the most impactful and timeless speeches in sports history. Listen and follow It Was Said Sports, a documentary podcast presentation of Shining City Audio, a C13 Originals, and John Meacham Studio. Available now on Odyssey and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
You know, one of the things I love about this show is that I get an opportunity to talk to the people that I want to talk to. And we have some extremely talented individuals in the in media here in the Twin Cities and across the state. And so I like to check in and have a lot of different people on the show. I know that other stations like to, stick to just having the same, 3 or 4 people. I like to develop relationships with people across the board. And our next guest, this is his first time coming on the show. He's been a little bit elusive. Okay, he's kind of slick and slippery. He's a little Barry Sanders-esque, but he's finally on the show to talk Gopher football. And maybe I'll ask him a question about Minnesota United soccer. His name is Andy Greder. Give him a follow on Twitter at Andy Greder, sports writer for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, and he's joining us here on Lake Night. Hey, Andy, it's a pleasure to actually finally get you on the show tonight, man. How you been?
I'm good, man. That's the first and probably the only time I'll ever be compared to Barry Sanders. So I'll take it, I guess.
I mean, he's Hall of Famer. That's good company you're running with, right?
Yeah, I'm not complaining about it. I just don't know how accurate it is. I'll take the compliment. Thanks for having me on. But yeah, I don't know. That's like you said, that's a Hall of Famer. That's probably the most elusive running back I grew up watching, maybe in NFL history. So I'll take it I'll take the compliments where I can get them.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, and let's start there with running back because you do cover the Golden Gopher football team, and clearly, 0-1 losing to Ohio State. There's no shame in losing to Ohio State because Ohio State's one of the premier college football programs in the entire country. But the big sad thing about the loss is that you lost Mo Ibrahim for the rest of the season. And now we got to start to figure out what's next for the Golden Gopher program at the running back position. So I'll ask you the tough question that I think that we're gonna start to find out here over the next couple of weeks. But how do you view the running back situation as they move forward for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think you laid it out well. That, like you said, losing to the Buckeyes, there's no shame in that, but to lose the Big Ten running back of the year, a guy who led the nation in carries per game last year, that's just a devastating blow. There's really no replacing the type of skills that Mo Ibrahim has. Just the vision, the hard running style, the forward lean that he has, just the veteranness that he brings to the table, and that's one of the reasons why they're so high on what this team could be this year. And now they have to transition, and I think it comes at a good time because you have 3 non-conference games to try to figure out what you have in that room. And the first guy on that list is Trey Potts, a guy who showed some flashes last year in a couple of games, had some big carries at Maryland and Illinois, and really showed a bit of a burst and a little bit of shiftiness. And I was talking with running back coach Kenny Burns, and he said there's a little bit of Rodney Smith in him, and I think you could see that in the games last year. So I'd imagine that he's going to get the first and longest look. Nobody's going to be a 25, 30 carry a game back going forward, but I say Trey Potts is probably the guy that gets the most carries. Cam Wally's a bigger back, maybe a faster guy, but he's yet to pop, show that he can really carry the load. Bryce Williams is a guy that has been overlooked, but has produced in times when they've been shorthanded in other areas and other times. They're in a spot now where they were a few years ago. 2018, Rodney Smith tears his ACL in the second game of the year, and Mo Ibrahim was an unproven, unknown running back behind him, and he was able to burst and had 1,000 yards that year. And if they're able to find someone like that, if it's Trey Potts, obviously the Gophers will be very happy, but we'll have to wait and see who that guy is, if that guy is out there.
Well, Andy, it's interesting that we're talking about Mo and the amount of carries, right? Because let's be honest, he has been one of those I'm going to carry the load type backs, and I'm not. I know it's easy for all of us to sit here, and me specifically, to go hindsight 2020. But it seems as though that a lot of college programs have typically gotten away from having that one guy that carries it, like 30 times a game or even high 20s a game. When I think back to the last great tandem, I mean, we've had good tandems with Gopher football, but remember when it was Maroney and Barber, and those guys were just bludgeoning people, the entire time? I wonder if in hindsight, maybe they had wished they had leaned on maybe some of the other guys to help them with their development just in case something happened with Mo or any other of the other running backs.
Yeah, I mean, that was interesting to hear as well. Just I remember being in PJ's office at the end of spring ball, and he was saying, hey, we're going to ride Mo. And it was interesting because he's been of the Glenn Mason school of, have a pair and a spare of running backs and have guys that you can rely on that aren't just the go-to bell cow running back. And I think they wanted to do that. But I think PJ just got to a point where he wanted to ride the best guy that he had at the biggest moment in the biggest game of the year, the toughest competition. And it was working out well. I mean, he had way too many carries. He had 30 carries through three quarters. And just given the nature of the injury, that could have happened on the first carry. You could rupture your Achilles on the first carry as well as the 30th carry, and I don't know if that's so much of a wear and tear thing. But yeah, I mean, we've got guys that are going to get a taste that have only gotten a sniff so far, and yeah, I think they wanted to have a more equitable split between the guys, but he just got greedy and wanted to ride Mo, just knowing the quality that he had against the Buckeyes.
Yeah, we're talking to Andy Greeter from the St. Paul Pioneer Press. We're talking Gopher football with him here on Late Night News Talk 830-WCCO. Please do give him a follow on Twitter. Just look up his name, Andy Greeter, which is spelled Greder. So my next question would be, when you look at that offense and losing the MVP, I guess you could say, or I don't want to say MVP, let's just say the best overall player, arguably in your entire program, being done for the year. That means that there's going to be a lot more pressure, Andy, on Tanner Morgan. The thing that I do like about Tanner Morgan is in tough spots, he has shown the ability to rise up to the occasion. But this is a different beast because this is him being without Mo for the rest of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, if you have somebody to fall back on, it would be Tanner Morgan, a guy that, I think he's 18-9 or something like that as a starter. He was all Big Ten second team in 2019. Has shown that he can carry the load and be a veteran presence in the huddle and in the locker room without Mo there. But, yeah, I think we need to see what the real Tanner Morgan is, right? Is he the All-Big Ten guy in 2019, or is it the guy that really struggled in the first year with Mike Sanford Jr. in 2020 and saw his quarterback rating go down 20 points? I think we saw against Ohio State that it's probably more of the 2019 variety. I think we saw, a poise and an understanding and making some plays that show that, maybe that year of having normalcy with spring ball and the normal training camp and a year of comfort with Sanford can prove dividends. But, yeah, I think, a lot more is going to be on Tanner Morgan's shoulders. A lot more is going to be on the passing game shoulders. And we're going to have to see that he's more of a 2019 version than 2020.
One of the things that would help him out a ton is if you can get Chris Autman-Bell back. What is the status of him as one of the wideouts? Because, I thought and anticipated that he might play last week, but it sounded like he tried to give it a go during warm-ups. It wasn't feeling 100%, wasn't feeling right, and so they opted to not play him. Where are we at with him going into this weekend?
Yeah, I think he's very close to coming back. It sounds like he was at practice earlier this week. I don't know if he's gotten full clearance to come back into a game. The Gophers are a 20-point favorite against Miami, Ohio on Saturday, and you just lost your your top running back and your number one wide receivers on the verge of coming back, do you maybe just tap the brakes on it and try to go without him? You were able to show yourself to be formidable against the Buckeyes for 3 quarters, and Miami's not the same quality. Do you want to rush him back from a high ankle sprain that usually takes a while to get back from, and maybe save him for the Colorado game? That's just my theory with it, but I could see him coming back. It seems like he's close. I know that he wants to come back. I know he's itching to, produce and step up with Mogon. But just looking at the big picture and knowing that you are essentially a 3-touchdown favorite, you go on the road to Colorado next week, which will be a tougher game. Do you maybe give him another week's rest and try to go with the guys that he had against the Buckeyes? We'll wait and see, but it looks like he's close.
Yeah, that's what I'm anticipating. Like you, I just anticipate that they'll probably give him one more week. If they're supposed to be that much of a giant against Miami of Ohio, and that much of an Miami of Ohio being an underdog in that way, 21 points in Vegas. So you're probably going to opt to give him one more week to give him a little bit more rest and get healthy. But one of the kids that surprised a lot of people was the Dylan Wright kid, the transfer from Texas A&M. Is he going to be the next breakout receiver at the U?
Based on, that fade route that he had early on against the Buckeyes cornerback, it certainly got a lot of people's attention as, being of that Tyler Johnson, Rashad Bateman ilk. He certainly showed it. We were at only a few practices in fall, and he made those plays in pretty much every practice. Those kind of one-handed catches, those, jump balls that, really wow you with his size at, what is he, like 6'4", 210. But he just didn't show it consistently enough. I think there was a question kind of going into spring ball and out of spring ball was, he's got all the physical tools, but is this guy too raw to be able to put on the field? And I think he's developed enough to obviously contribute now. I think we've seen a lot of what he can be, but can he do it consistently enough to be a go-to guy? Certainly there's promise there, and I think the credit to Matt Simon, just given, even though he was a 4-star guy and played at a SEC program like Texas A&M, he didn't see the field much and was pretty raw, but to see him develop and get a taste like he did against the Buckeyes, it certainly shows that they could have a wide receiving core, not just Chris Autman-Bell.
Talking Gopher football with Andy Greeter from the St. Paul Pioneer Press here on Late Night News Talk 830 WCCO. One more question about the Gophers, and it has to do, Andy, with the defense. So I'm not going to crush them for their performance last week because we know that Ohio State is good. And quite frankly, Ohio State, I think nationally people are like, what's going on with their defense, right? But I posed the question about the defense and what your overall thoughts are about them because, a couple of years ago when they had that monster year and they go to the big bowl game and they defeat Auburn, it was remarkable, right? Winfield Jr. is amazing. Tyler Johnson's amazing. Everybody's amazing, right? But last year, they dramatically took a step back defensively. And I'm still, to this day, and I know you'll probably laugh at this, Andy, but I think it was a Friday night game when they played Maryland. And I could not believe how that played out. That was just, to this day, I think I'm still scarred. Not in attend the U, but I've been a Gopher fan my entire life. The meltdown that occurred with Maryland, and it seemed like it was the beginning of the end for what they were going to do defensively for the season. So how do you evaluate and view this defense? Do you think that this defense is better than last season's, maybe relatively close? I know it's early. We've only played one game, and the opponent was so good. But what do you make from what you kind of saw in the offseason, maybe with some of the limited practices you saw? What do you make of the defense this year?
Yeah, seeing that big run that Myron Williams had where he broke contain and went 70 yards early against the Gophers defense, it harkened back to last year. They gave up something like almost 700 yards in that Maryland game. Like, it was amazing to see. And they did it the week before that last year as well against Michigan. They gave up just a ton of yards, and that was a major problem for them again on Thursday against the Buckeyes. Ohio State, for how great that program is, and all the teams and programs that they've beaten down over the years, they set a program record with 10 yards per play against the Gophers. Like, that's just amazing. They had, 5 plays of over 35 yards, 4 plays over 60, just absolutely gashed the Gophers defense. And it was, wow, this is just like last year all over again. And last year they had to replace, 4 NFL draft picks, Winfield, Kamal Martin, those guys, Carter Coughlin. And now they brought in some transfers to try to fill some gaps, and we saw some improvement there. I mean, they have to be better, right? I mean, they have to find a way to improve. It was interesting to hear defensive coordinator Joe Rossi talk about what the breakdowns were. And, in those 5 explosive plays that they gave up, it sounded like, 2 of them were just missed assignments that they didn't cover a swing route, or, they didn't, cover a guy crossing the middle. It was kind of some major breakdowns, but then also of them, they just got out executed. They had guys in the right spot and just got beat. They want to have maybe 2 or fewer explosive plays and gave up 5. So, yeah, I mean, that's going to be the biggest question mark going into this. I think we're still going to see the Gophers be able to run the football given the quality of their offensive line and some of the promisingness of some of their young running backs. But it's really going to be on the defense to show that they can improve. And you want to chalk it up to, the Buckeyes' quality. But, again, like you said, these were a lot of hallmarks to how bad they were in 2020. So I think a lot of that is yet to be determined.
Yeah. All right, so the final question I have for you, and it's not Gopher football related, it's actually about Minnesota United soccer. Just kind of give me an update. In your opinion, where are we at with the team, or how do you feel they look right now at this particular point in the season? Are you optimistic that this team is looking like a team that could maybe do something, make some noise, playoffs or whatever? Because I felt like last year was a major step forward with how they played. But then, I watched them a little bit early, haven't watched them as much here late. Yeah. Your thoughts on United soccer?
Yeah, I mean, they're in 5th place in the West. Top 4 get a playoff spot. So obviously they want to get in that top 4. This is a major week for the Loons. They've got 3 games in 8 days, and all 3 of those teams are above them in the Western Conference. And Seattle Sounders, who are the class of the Western Conference, they go there on Saturday, a place that they haven't won at, a place where they got, beat down 4-0 in the season opener, and a place that they lost, 3-2 in heartbreaking fashion in the Western Conference final last year. So they have nightmares of going to Lumen Field, and the Sounders are the class of the conference. So that's going to be a tough test for them, but then they have Sporting Kansas City after that and LA Galaxy at home a week from Saturday. And like I said, all 3 of those teams are above them in the Western Conference. So if they're able to get out of there with, 4 or 5 points or even more, I think they'd be satisfied with that given the quality that they're facing. Minnesota has struggled to score goals all year, and they're starting to get some of their attackers back. Franco Fragapane, he's going to play on Saturday. Emmanuel Reynoso, their all-star, it looks like he's going to be able to play at some point over the next week. Their leading scorer, Robin Lod, sounds like he's also going to be able to come back. So they're getting healthy at the right time, but it's going to be a daunting week as they face these 3 tough teams in the West.
Give him a follow on Twitter at Andy Greeter. It's Andy Greeter, sports writer for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, covering the Gophers and Minnesota United soccer, joining us here on Late Night. Hey, Andy, pleasure to have you on, man. Let's do it again.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Henry.
All right, take care. That's Andy Greeter joining us here on Late Night.
I'm Erin Ryan, political commentator, comedy writer, and host of Crooked Media's Hysteria.
And I'm co-host Alyssa Mastromonaco, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff for President Obama.
Each week on Hysteria, we are joined by a team of hilariously opinionated ladies to discuss the headlines from the serious to the absurd.
We cover everything from reproductive rights to rom-coms and break down the political news of the week and cultural stories that affect women's lives.
New episodes of Hysteria drop every Thursday. Listen on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Innovation, resilience, agility. It's how Michigan businesses work together and continue to build the future. Our expertise, talented workforce, and collaborative environment are making a difference now and shaping the future. Join us and make your mark where it matters. Visit michiganbusiness.org/radio to put your plans in motion. That's michiganbusiness.org/radio.
How is your mental health? Billie Eilish, Kevin Love of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Imagine Dragons, Lil Nas X, and so many more feel the same pressures we do. They're joining our host, Carson Daly, for I'm Listening, September 23rd, starting at 6 p.m. right here. Carson and a cast of mental health experts, athletes, musicians, other notables, and you will share stories, insights, and help us all remember that we are not alone. Please join us, because talking about our mental health has the power to save lives. For more, visit imlistening.org.